Okay, thank you. Um, Again, my name is Christian Mentor. I'm the Community Engagement and Health Literacy Librarian at University of Nebraska Medical Center. And as part of my job, I do a lot of community outreach to promote access to quality health information. So today we'll be talking about how to evaluate the information that you find online, specifically health information, but also review some websites where you can start your search and not have to go to Google. So before I get into my presentation, I just want to start with a question, and you can put your answers in the chat box. So thinking back to the most recent time that you needed health information, where did you go first? Did you go to a book, a magazine, a TV show? Do you have a favorite website? Just a Google search, a person? Take a moment to think about that and then put your answers in the chat box. And I'll give you all a second to respond to that. All right, I see someone saying they went to Google. And someone else says they like WebMD. Good. Any other comments? Anyone want to share? Google. All right, Librarian Google. So I see Google is very popular, which is the norm, very normal. All right, thank you. If anyone else has any other comments, feel free to add them to the chat. So you all are not alone. So this is a survey from the National Cancer Institute, their Health Information National Trends Survey. And they looked at where people went for their health or medical topics, or where they went first. So you'll see right in the middle, over 70% of people started on the internet. So a lot of you are mentioning Google. Internet is very popular as a health resource. The next most common resource was a doctor or healthcare provider, followed by books and pamphlets and family members. So those were kind of the top 5 areas or resources for health information. So first I'm going to talk about how to evaluate health information. This is especially important since a lot of people are starting at Google. And so you want to think about what criteria do you use to determine what's good health information and maybe what's health information that's not so good or that you want to skip over. I like to use the trust it or trash it criteria, and this was developed by the Genetic Alliance organization, and it can be used for both print and electronic resources. And so it asks 3 questions. Who said it? When did they say it? And how do they know? And if you go and visit the website for Trust It or Trash It, they have a little more detail explaining each of these questions, but let's walk through them. So the first question is, who said it? And when you're thinking about who said it, you want to think about who wrote the material. Is the name of the author easy to find? If there's no author listed, then that's a question mark, and that may be something that you don't want to use to help inform your health information, since you're not able to verify the quality or the expertise of the person behind it. So in addition to knowing who wrote it, you also want to know what experience does that author have. So if they're writing something about diabetes, are they an endocrinologist? Are they a family medicine provider? Are they a nutritionist or dietitian talking about diet and diabetes? You kind of want to know, based on what they're writing, is their expertise relevant to the topic? Does the article provide the source of the information? So someone could write a blog post, or they could write a page on a website about diabetes or heart disease or nutrition and fitness. And it's great that they have their own expertise, but you also want to know that what they're writing is based on research. And so they should be providing some resources for what they're basing their research on, whether it's books, federal agencies, health agencies, or journal articles, or whatever it may be. So if there are no sources provided, that may be a red flag because you're not able to verify that what they wrote is based on fact. Another good thing to look for is that it doesn't use advertising. So all the websites that I'm going to talk about a little bit later do not have any advertising on them. And so you want to steer clear of resources that use the information to sell a product. So if their whole purpose of educating you about the product or about this health issue is so that you'll buy their medication or buy their device, that's not the resource that you wanted to use as your final source for making your health decisions. So here's an example from the Academy of Nutrition and Dietetics website. They have an article called 4 Types of Foods to Support Memory. And if we look under the title, we see the author's name, Marissa Moore. We see her, a lot of letters behind her name, MBA, RDN, LD. Those tell us something about her expertise. But even if you didn't know what all those stood for, what I like about this website is that when you click on the author's name, they will also tell you just a little short blurb about that author. So we can see that Marissa Moore is an Atlanta-based registered dietitian nutritionist. And so that's what the RDN stands for, registered dietitian nutritionist. And then the LD is licensed dietitian. And so even if you didn't know all that, they provide you with enough information to tell you that Marissa has expertise to write about foods that support a healthy memory. Is another example from a personal blog, the Naughty Natty blog. And this is an article about home remedy tips to remove dandruff from your hair. And so we see this one is written by someone named Andrea Laura. And when we click on her name, we see that Andrea Laura is a very creative writer, an active contributor who loves to share information or loves to share informative news or updates on various topics and brings great information to her readers. So we see that she's probably a really nice person who loves to share information, but we can't tell what is her expertise. Does she have any expertise in skincare, any training that would make her an authority on giving home remedy tips? And so you'll see this often with personal websites or personal blogs where people like to share their personal experiences, which is fine, but you also want to balance that with information from an authoritative source for someone who has expertise in that area of medicine or healthcare. Now, sometimes an organization is the author. So this is very common on websites for Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, or CDC. A lot of NIH resources come from different institutes within the National Institutes of Health. So for example, the National Heart, Lung, and Blood Institute, and also like American Lung Association, American Heart Association, American Diabetes Association. So there are, various national or even state and regional health organizations that create websites and booklets and pamphlets with health information. And so they usually have a whole team of writers that work together. So they may not list a particular person, and their organization would serve as the recommendation or the experience, the expertise. So because it's coming from a national organization, that gives them credibility. So when you want to know a little bit more about the organization itself, then you look for the About Us details. So specifically on websites, if they don't have an About Us, that's a huge red flag because you should be able to easily find out who is this organization, what do they do, what's their mission, what's their goal of providing health information. the mission statement, also the contact information. There should be some type of email or contact form so that if you find something on the website that you have a question about, you should be able to easily contact the organization for more information. And then many websites also have the names of the editors, reviewers, and advisors. So they may not include the author, the person actually doing the writing, but the editors and reviewers and advisors should all be listed clearly, and they should all have some type of health expertise. So they're usually going to be healthcare providers or public health or some type of health science background as well. So here's an example from the Office of Women's Health. And I wanted to use this website to show you what the source list should look like. So I mentioned earlier that when organizations or individuals write a website, they should give you a list of sources on what they base their research. So this particular page is on caregiver stress. And if we were to scroll all the way to the bottom of the page, we would see this list of sources. And so you'll usually see this section called sources or references or something like that. And it should give you a list of websites, books, journal articles, and also enough information so that you can find those materials for yourself. So on this page, all of these are links, and if you were to click on those links, it would take you out to publisher websites for journals, or to other websites such as the Pew Research Center and their articles. And then when it comes to advertising, there are some good websites that do include some advertising. Those are not my first go-to as a librarian. When I provide information, I like to point to people to the resources without the advertising. I think it's less confusing. But if you do use a health website with advertising, the advertising should be clearly identified as an ad. It shouldn't look like the health information and the advertising should not blend together. And then you want to avoid the information that's written specifically just to sell the product. I know a lot of pharmaceutical companies will have some informational websites, and you'll have other, medical device companies will sometimes have informational websites as a part of their larger website to talk about some of the health benefits of their product. And it doesn't mean that the information is incorrect. It just means that shouldn't be your only source. You should be able to compare that information to other non-biased information that's not coming from the person paying for it or the company paying for it, and it should be similar. There should be some overlap there. So that was the first question of who said it. You want to think about, is the author listed? What's their expertise? Did they list any sources for their research? And stay away or try to stay away from information that's clearly just written for advertising. So our second question is, when did they say it? So in thinking about when did they say it, there should be a date, a publication, or a review or update. And so if there's no date provided, it's hard for you to tell how recent it was published. And in healthcare, a lot of information can become outdated pretty quickly. And so you want to make sure, depending on what your health topic is, you want to make sure you have the most recent information. So with that, you want to look for a date, and you also, when you do see the date, you want to see if you can find whatever is most current. And again, so if you're looking for information on anatomy and the human body and how our organs work, a lot of that doesn't change a whole lot. Something from 10 years ago talking about your stomach and how it operates is probably going to still be okay now. But if you're looking for, if you have a family member that's been diagnosed with cancer and you want to know about the latest treatments, you're definitely going to want to look for something that's been published within the last 5 years, and probably within the last 3 years is even better. Because cancer treatments is something that changes rapidly, and some of the treatments that we have today may not have been available 10 years ago. So you don't want to look at literature that's too old or information that's out of date. So for websites, the date ideally should be at the beginning, at the top of the page of the document, but sometimes they put it at the end as well. And it'll say something like last update, last review, review date, revised, etc. So again, going back to our Eat Right website and the article by Marissa Moore, we look at that and we can see that this article was published in October 2019, and then it was reviewed in March 2020, and that was the last review. So that told us that it's less than 2 years old, and they even had a review, almost a year ago. And so if there's no update, that probably means that they reviewed it and the information was still current. If they had made some changes, it should have said something about updated, March 2020. And then our final question is, how did they know? So I'm thinking about, how did they know this information? Is there information based on research of multiple people and multiple studies, or is it based on personal experience or one person's experience, a personal opinion or one person's experience? Does it match what you find in multiple sources? And is it too good to be true? So let's say you look at 2 different websites about how to prevent diabetes. They should be pretty consistent in the information. If they're both recent information, you shouldn't have something wildly different. So if you have something that's kind of an outlier and doesn't match with other current science or medical experts, that might be a red flag. If it's too good to be true, if you're reading some information like this is a magic cure, you'll see you'll come across things like that related to cancer, especially. Eat this, take this herbal supplement, and then you'll be cured right away. Or there's, some secret natural cures that no one's telling you about. If it's too good to be true, that's a red flag. Sometimes there are instances where there's new and cutting edge research. And so it's a new development. I mean, there's only 1 or 2 studies available right now. That's a little different. And so that's just something to be aware of, and something where you have to be aware that there's limited research and make your decisions based on the fact that, more research needs to be done, and you may not have a lot of conclusive details about it. So one example that I'd like to give about this is related to heart healthy eating plan. So there's a lot of different diets recommended for how to prevent heart disease or prevent heart attacks. You could have the Mediterranean diet, the paleo diet, the DASH eating plan. And so just thinking about like comparing 2, so if we just looked at the DASH eating plan and the paleo diet, and as just a simple disclaimer, I am not giving medical advice, and I'm not saying that you should use one or the other. I'm just pointing out some of the differences in the research that's available on both of these. So the DASH eating plan is a flexible eating plan that focuses on daily and weekly nutrition goals, and it emphasizes eating lots of fresh fruits and vegetables, low-fat dairy, poultry, fish, and limiting foods that are high in sugar and saturated fat. And so the National Institutes of Health has a website with information about the DASH diet or the DASH eating plan. And so they also include a list, an overview of about 5 clinical trials. And so if you look at that information, you'll see that those clinical trials have included hundreds of people. And some trials were a little smaller, like about 160 people, and some were larger with 400 or over 800 people. And there's seen consistency across the various trials with showing benefits for reducing the risk of heart disease. When you compare that to the paleo diet, which encourages people to eat like hunter-gatherers from the Stone Age with a focus on lots of fruit and veggies, fish, lean meat, and it excludes dairy and grains and processed foods and sugar. So research results have been mixed on paleo diet, with some studies showing benefits and some showing risks and increased risk of heart disease. But the one thing that's interesting about the paleo diet research is that most of these studies have been very small, with less than 50 people, and some as few as only 9 people in the study. So it's hard to make a definite generalization to the entire population when you've only had 9 or 10 people in a study. And so there's also been some criticism of quality of those studies. So not to say that paleo doesn't work for anyone, just is an example that more research and more high quality research is needed before it can be recommended at the same level as the DASH eating plan. So that's just an example of comparing when you're thinking about the research, comparing to see, how big were the studies? And also sometimes you want to think about things like who was included in the study? Was it a mix of men and women, older and younger, different race and ethnicities? Where did they do the study? Was it urban, rural? Some of that, depending on the health issue, will impact whether or not the results are relevant to you and your health care. So those are our 3 main questions for criteria. Think about who said it, how recent is the information, when did they say it, and then how do they know? What are they basing this information on? What type of research is already available? So I'm going to take a quick look at the chat. I think I saw a couple of things come in. Okay, so a couple of people shared where they get their information, news and TV and radio. Awesome. And then we have a hello from a new member. Okay, so moving on. So now that we have thought about how to evaluate the information, let's talk about some of the resources that are available. And so my goal is pointing to you to specific websites is that you don't have to evaluate as deeply. You don't have to evaluate the quality because these are high quality sources that have already been selected for you. And instead, your criteria would be more along the lines of, does this match my information needs? And you won't have to worry as much about who are these people and organizations, do they know what they're talking about? Okay, so the first website I want to talk about is called Medline Plus, and Medline Plus is provided by the National Library of Medicine. This resource has, it comes in both English and in Spanish, and it also has some materials that are available in over 40 other languages. Up at the top of the top toolbar, you'll see a link for Espanol, and that switches the entire website to Spanish. And you can also switch it back to English. So there are several sections of this website. The first one is health topics, and that provides over 1,000 different health topic pages on different diseases and health conditions and general wellness topics. When you look at one of these pages, they provide you with a general overview of the topic, and then you get some more specific links. So if you're like just starting out and you want to learn some basic information, they have those basic links. If you want more advanced information, they also link you out to some research articles from medical literature, more advanced literature. They usually break it down by diagnosis, treatment, prevention, living with the condition if it's a chronic illness. So I like this, nicely organized and easy to make your way through the page and find the information you need. They link out to a lot of different quality websites. So I recommend Medline Plus as a first starting point because Medline Plus, they don't write a lot of original content, but what they do is they have library staff that review the different websites that are already available for quality. And if you want to know what their quality criteria is, you'll see an About Medline Plus link at the top of the page where they give you some of that background information on how they select what's included. So you can start here and they'll link you out to a lot of other great websites that you don't have to go look for them yourself. The drugs and supplements section provides information about prescription drugs. So pretty much almost every prescription over-the-counter drug, you can find some information on Medline Plus. I give you the same information you would get from a pharmacist. So that little insert that's usually included with your medication that tells you like how to take, why you would be prescribed this. how to use it, what to do if you overdose, how is it typically, what types of ways is it given, like capsules or a liquid or things like that. And so they have general information about each drug. And they also have information about dietary supplements. So you'll find most of the popular dietary supplements are included. If it's not on the website, then that means that there's not enough research available. So they do base the information about what's been published in medical journals and things like that. So there may be some newer supplements that haven't been added yet, just because there's not enough research to tell you whether or not they're effective and do they actually do the things that that people claim they can do. The genetics section explains genes, chromosomes. It focuses on health conditions that are caused by genetic abnormalities. So this is a section where if you know you have a genetic disease, you can go and look for it here and read more information, or if you just want to learn a general information about genes and chromosomes and how they impact health. There's also a booklet included about just learn basic introduction to genetics. And then the medical test section is where you can look up, they have a list of various medical tests, and they'll tell you why that test would be prescribed, what you have to do to prepare for it, what does a normal result or abnormal results look like, and some general information that would help you know how to go back to your provider and ask questions so you can better understand the results of your medical test. The medical encyclopedia has articles. So this is original content, short encyclopedia type articles that you can learn about different health conditions. You can learn about if you have like a surgery or a procedure, you can learn about how to prepare for it and then how to care for yourself at home. And so these medical encyclopedia articles are also linked to the health topic pages as well. So you can find them in both places. And then finally, the healthy recipes list is a list of healthy recipes. They're not organized by disease. I know some people, for example, look for recipes that are good for if they want to prevent diabetes or if they're living with diabetes, or if they want heart healthy recipes. So they don't organize it by health condition, but they do organize it by the types of meals. So if you want some healthy breakfast recipes or dinner recipes, or if you're looking for, smoothies or things like that, they organize it kind of more along the lines of the types of meals or the types of dishes. So that's Medline Plus. And then this is just a reminder, over 1,000 health topics available. So pretty much almost anything for personal health and wellness, you can start with Medline Plus and kind of branch out from there. Find anything from nutrition, exercise, first aid, pet health, food safety, healthy aging, how to talk to your doctor, emergency preparedness, so for weather emergencies. There's a little bit of everything on there. And then, as I mentioned before, with links to many trusted organizations, so places like the CDC, National Institutes of Health, American Diabetes Association, Office of Women's Health, FamilyDoctor.org, which is I believe, come from the American Academy of Pediatricians, or either the American Academy of Family Medicine, I can't remember which one. And then Mayo Clinic and a lot of other national organizations are linked to their site as well. So I treat Medline Plus as my medical Google, and it takes me to a lot of the resources that I need. So Medline Plus also has a magazine. The magazine comes out quarterly, and so you may not know that breast cancer is the most common cancer in Hispanic and Latino women. And so the current issue of Medline Plus magazine features a story of actress Adamari Lopez and her experience with breast cancer at the age of 33. And so each issue provides breakthrough news from research that's being done at the National Institutes of Health, but it also provides stories of individuals from all walks of life and how they've handled their various health challenges. And on the front cover of the magazine is there usually someone famous and sharing their issues, their challenges and how they've overcome them, or how they're successfully living with a health issue. And then there also could be stories about efforts by NIH scientists to continuing to work on to cure different diseases. So you can subscribe through the website for free. So you can read the magazine online, or you just can subscribe and they'll mail you a copy for free. If you work with an organization such as a school, a health clinic, a library, a place of worship, you can also request bulk subscription for free, and then you can distribute copies of the magazine to community members. Another place for news is the NIH News and Health. And so we are in the middle of an ongoing pandemic, and we also face challenges in our everyday life that can cause us stress. So the January issue of the NIH News and Health looks at how stress can affect our body, and then offers tips for de-stressing and improving overall well-being. Other news in the issue includes prevention of infections and a recent study on postpartum depression. So NIH News and Health comes out monthly, and similar to Medline Plus magazine, you can read the newsletter online, or you can request a subscription and they'll mail a print version. You can also, similar to the Medline Plus magazine, you can also request a bulk subscription for your organization and give those out to your community as well. You can find all the past issues of the newsletter on the website, and they also have some special issues where they've seen that certain topics are really popular, and so they may take an older issue and update it with more recent information and research. And so one of those topics, for example, is coping with caregiving, and so it's a special issue to just focus on resources to support the health and well-being of caregivers as they take care of families and friends. It's important for teenagers to learn how to find accurate information and how to apply health information to their everyday life. Their bodies are going through a lot of changes and are starting to take more responsibility for managing their own health care and having those important conversations with their health providers. So the Boston Children's Hospital has developed two websites, one for young men and one for young women. The mission of these sites is to help teens, parents, educators, and healthcare providers improve their understanding of normal adolescent health and development, as well as specific diseases that are maybe of concern to this age group. The site also empowers young people to be advocates for their own health. So the website features information related to nutrition and fitness, emotional health, sexual health, and general wellness. So there's also an option for teens to submit health questions that will be answered by a team of healthcare providers. And then they can also have the option to participate in monthly online health chats as well. So people in the United States are living longer, and adults are quickly becoming a larger segment of the US population, both here in Nebraska and nationwide. So it's important to have access to trustworthy information on healthy aging. The National Institutes on Aging provides this website with health information focused on topics that are most common to older adults. It's not as expansive as Medline Plus, but it focuses on what's most important to know as we age. So topics include exercise, healthy eating, brain health, caregiver health, communicating with your doctor, advanced care planning, and so much more. And for those who prefer to have something, a print material that they can read at home, the National Institute of Aging also will mail out print materials. So they have these brochures called Age Page. And you can see examples of a few, such as dietary supplements, choosing a doctor, sexuality in later life. There are a lot of other topics that are covered. You can go to their website and order, and they'll ship them for free. On the left-hand side of the page, I have pictures of a couple of exercise booklets. So the top one, the exercise and physical activity, kind of a big book. It's a little heavier, but it's very detailed and goes into some daily exercise activities that you can do at home without any exercise equipment. Just casual things like maybe small, using water bottles as small weights or a towel or things like that. But most of these activities don't require any equipment at all. The Workout to Go booklet is just a small pamphlet that you can really stick into a purse or a backpack and take with you anywhere. And it covers a lot of the same exercises in the larger book, but it's smaller and more compact. And then you may be a caregiver. We know that 1 in 5 Americans have been a caregiver to either an adult or a child over the past year. That's over 50 million people in this country. And then 61% of those people are also working while they are caregiving. So I'm sure you all know that that's a lot to balance as a family caregiver or a caregiver or friend, and then you may also still be in the workforce. And more Americans are reporting that being a caregiver is unfortunately affecting their health too. So in 2015, 17% of those surveyed responded that being a caregiver had made their health worse. And then by 2020, we had 23% of respondents had reported that being a caregiver had made their health worse. So it's important for caregivers to have resources to support themselves and their families. So the Family Caregiver Alliance has created this website as a resource for caregivers. And there are several sections. Some of the information is focused on caregivers and families. Some are focused on health professionals, so like best practices for health professionals in caring for adults and with specific health conditions, as well as their caregivers. So the website includes easy to read fact sheets. If you go under the caregiver education, oops, going back, the caregiver education section of the website has fact sheets that are on specific conditions such as stroke, dementia, vision loss, depression, traumatic brain injury, and several others. There are also fact sheets on caregiving strategies, such as how to effectively use assistive technology, how to navigate legal issues, how to talk to doctors on behalf of your family member or your friend, using respite care, and being in the workforce and providing and finding elder care, and a lot of other topics as well. And they do provide some videos and some webinars for caregivers. And then under the Caregiver Connect section is where you can find state resources for caregivers, support groups, stories, caregivers sharing their stories, and relevant clinical trials. So there are some clinical trials or research studies that are looking at how to improve the health of caregivers and their families. And they also provide a newsletter as well. If you want to keep up with news and other resources that are updated from the Family Caregiver Alliance, you can subscribe to their email newsletter. And sometimes I get questions about more advanced literature. So the other websites I mentioned, like Medline Plus and National Institute on Aging, they're great, but some people, are ready to move beyond that. They need something that's more advanced. They want to see the literature that the doctors are reading, that the scientists are reading and writing. So that's where you go to PubMed. And PubMed.gov is offered by the National Library of Medicine. You can search it pretty easily. This is a screenshot of the homepage. And so you just put in, the words that you're searching for, click the green search button. And here's an example of what the results page looks like. There are 2 features that I want to point out that'll make it easy for you. You don't have to be a librarian or have a lot of fancy search skills to use this website. But it's important to see that you can filter results by the year published. So as I mentioned earlier, when talking about criteria, you want to find more recent. Most of the time you'll need more recent information. And PubMed has a lot of old material. So sometimes you can find something from 1960s all the way to 2021. So if you filter by results, then you can limit it, to the last 5 years or 3 years or 10 years, whatever works best for you. And then another thing to know is that PubMed includes the record, so it'll tell you the title, let you read the abstract, it'll tell you where it's published, the journal is published in, but it doesn't always let you see the free full text. Sometimes some of these articles are behind what we call a paywall, and publishers require you to either pay individually or have access to a library or institution with a license to their materials. However, there is a good amount of full text available, and so if you go down to text availability, if you check the box for free full text, then it'll allow you to search and only see what's available for free. And that will help your search a little better if you're not coming through an institution that has more access. And then I just wanted to point out, we are still in the COVID-19 pandemic. People are still looking for information to keep up with, how they should protect themselves, stay safe, what happen if they do become infected, learning more about vaccines. So the CDC has a COVID-19 page. There are other resources out there, but I like to point to the CDC as a starting point. And they do keep their site updated. So now they have information about vaccine safety, how to report if you have, if you do get the vaccine and you may have some side effects that you're worried about, you can report them. What that we know so far about safety for the two mRNA vaccines that have been released in the US so far. And even they've now added some information about the new variants of the coronavirus that we see in the UK and some parts of the US now. And then I want to remind you that libraries bring people together even when we have to stay apart. So even if you cannot come in person to a library, like I said, all these resources I listed, some of them come through National Library of Medicine, some of them come from other organizations, but there are library resources that you can get to as well. So here in Nebraska, we have a website called Nebraska Access. And this is offered through the Nebraska Library Commission. And it's a free website. When you get there, you'll see a section on health, illness, and medical. And so that has a list of some databases. And also they have some other websites that they recommend that you get to outside of their website. But if you want to use the databases that Nebraska Library Commission offers, you will need a login. So you can either use your state driver's license number or your state ID number as your login. They don't track that information. They don't keep it. It's just a way for them to make sure that no one who's outside, who's not a Nebraska resident, has access to the resources because they license them a certain way. But if you don't want to use your ID or your driver's license, you can also contact your local public library, and your public library will be able to give you a password so that you can get into these databases from home. And then my library, the McGoogan Library at UNMC, has a service where you can ask a medical librarian your health questions. So we don't give you medical advice, but what we will do is do research for you. So let's say you have a new diagnosis or you're curious about some health condition that you've been dealing with for a while, but you want more information. Send us the health question, provide enough information. We may have some follow-up questions for you. Just tell us whatever you're comfortable sharing. And then we will research on your behalf, and you let us know if you want basic information or if you want those journal articles. And then we'll deliver the packet to you by mail or email. And this is free for anyone who lives in Nebraska or if they're coming from out of state and receiving medical care in Nebraska. So I have the contact information there as well. And that's all I have right now. So are there any questions? And feel free to drop questions in the Q&A or in the chat.
And this is just a reminder, we are recording this. So if you missed something and want to get back to it, it will be available on our YouTube channel probably later next week.
Awesome. Yeah, I know it's like a lot of information at once. So definitely encourage you all to go back and look at the recording if you need to.
All right. Well, if we don't have any questions, I think we're going to wrap up for the day. Christian, thank you so much for coming and talking to us. I know that I learned some really good information, and I'm hoping that everybody else did as well. Um, oh, and your contact information, perfect.
Yes. So feel free, like I said, our library is available to Nebraska residents. You are welcome to email me directly with health questions that you want research help with, or if you have general questions about this presentation, but you also can contact our main library email, which is askus@unmc.edu.
Okay, well, if there are no other questions, thanks everybody for coming today. And I think we're going to sign off. Thank you all very much.
Thank you.